Okay, first part of this comment, I don't know what you're talking about. Literally leftist states like New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania all had higher rates of bear attacks around the same time that you're talking about the Free State Project, and there 1 or 2 bear attacks that happened in New Hampshire. Sorry, left-leaning states had higher rates of bear attacks at the same time. Take your ass. If you're talking about like the rate 0 bear attacks, that's probably never going to happen without, I don't know, intentionally hunting black bears to extinction. Which is extremely unethical. I don't know about you, but for me, yeah, that sounds pretty fucked up to wipe an entire species off the face of the earth. You seem to get most of your information about libertarianism and libertarians from memes and shit you read on Reddit rather than actually engaging with libertarians in open and honest discussion. I don't know who needs to hear this, but we had roads before we had income tax. You know, a tax for being a worker, the people that socialists like to claim they represent. I don't know who all needs to hear this, but you don't actually care about workers if you're okay with taking 1/4 of their check for what you perceive as necessary goods and services from the state. Trying to talk about, oh, without taxes, how are we gonna build roads? You mean this shit? This shit right here? This shit, motherfucker? Right here? This piss-puss patchwork of filling in potholes? Is this what my taxes are for, dude? This? This? Is this the taxes? My taxes are supposed to take care of making sure we have a nice, clean environment out here in Baton Rouge. I'm so glad my taxes are keeping my great city of Baton Rouge clean and tidy. Y'all love to bring up, oh, without taxes, how will we build roads and how are we going to keep the streets clean? You're not doing it now! I know damn well I can spend my money better than the government with these results. Oh, and then there's the fact that you're talking about security. What, you talking about the police here in Baton Rouge? The police here in Baton Rouge? Yeah, don't remind me my taxes are paying for this crap. Yeah, the police cannot be trusted in my hometown, and my taxes are paying their salaries. And it's not like I actually need the police for my personal protection or anything. And y'all talk about public works while completely glossing over one detail. I pay a water bill. I pay an electric bill. That sounds like the free market to me. And the water bill also includes sewage and garbage. I am paying for a service. That's not tax funded. You see, the real reason socialists absolutely hate libertarians isn't because we're conservative light or something. We actually have more in common with each other than you want to admit. The difference is you are so dogmatically against capitalism that you can't even extend an olive branch to a similar political ideology when we have common ground on social issues, such as systemic racism or LGBT rights. And the reality is, the reason y'all are like this is because most of y'all are just edgelords who are trying to be contrarian to old white conservative values. And where y'all go wrong debating libertarians is you try to assume that we are in the same boat or have similar ideologies to them when we don't. The only thing libertarians have in common with conservatives is gun rights and capitalism. That's it. The real reason y'all hate libertarians is because we offer all the social progress without taking away people's paycheck or private property rights. Making sure we have a nice, clean environment out here in Baton Rouge. I'm so glad my taxes are...
Guy, you're complaining about that shit in a red state, while at the same time complaining how bad it is in blue states when you haven't even lived in a fucking blue state.
First of all, how do you know where I have and have not lived? I may not live in a blue state, but I have family who do. I got relatives in St. Louis Obispo, California I visited every now and then. Y'all really aren't much better. More importantly, Baton Rouge itself is a blue city, much like New Orleans. These cities have been run by Democrats as long as I've been alive. And the state has no responsibility to manage the police department in Baton Rouge. That responsibility falls onto the city, not the state. And this is why socialists have absolutely no right calling libertarians Republican light, because reality is, y'all are just diet Democrats. Y'all may not be registered as Democrats, but you sure as hell defend them and act like being anti-Republican is a flex. Republicans are red, Democrats are blue, neither party cares about me or you. What do I expect from the people who think being anti-racist is a flex? You're supposed to be! What, you want, a cookie?
So, letting corporations pollute the air, displace people, or as you say, even kill entire species of animals, because they are on the way of progress, right?
Are you seriously trying to say libertarians support that stuff when communists have done stuff like this? First of all, China already pollutes more than any other nation, and they are a Marxist nation. Anybody who supports socialism or Marxism does not get to lecture anyone about environmentalism.
Now, as you mentioned, no, there was no income tax before the 1900s. Most of the tax revenue came from liquor.
Yeah, then Prohibition happened, and so they switched over to income tax. I'm well aware, and I oppose it. See, if you actually took the time to get to know people, you would understand that, one, not all libertarians are ANCAPs. I'm a minarchist. I oppose the federal government entirely. I want to localize the government. As much as I have a problem with the way my city is being run, I have a lot more control over what's going on in my own backyard than I have what's going on in Washington goddamn D.C. And this is the problem many socialists have, is that they lump anybody they disagree with into the same category. Not only do y'all assume that all libertarians are just Republican-like, but you assume all libertarians are ANCAPs, when libertarianism is a very broad spectrum of different beliefs.
You say, well, we want to ally on social issues. Yes, but there are some material issues that cannot be sacrificed.
I don't know what the heck just happened, but I'm keeping it. Let's talk about those material issues. Why do you hate private property right? What makes you think poor people cannot prosper in a free market society? Why do y'all act like wage labor is the only way to make money in a free market society? I work a wage job and I'm starting a small business. You can do both. Y'all say we hate poor people. I am poor people. And then y'all try to gaslight us by telling us we're against our own voice. No, we're against your voice. Come up with better arguments for your positions. Stop trying to guilt everybody into agreeing with you.
Like healthcare, like education. We can have gay marriage, and we can have wherever else. But if people are living in misery, barely making it, because corporations have become a single entity that...
A single entity that controls everything? Yeah, that sounds like the government more than it sounds like corporations, my guy. And again with the corporation, do y'all even know what corporations are? Corporation does not describe the size of a business. It describes the business model. A corporation is merely a business that investors buy stake in the form of stocks and assume all risk and liability if it goes under or turns a profit. You and your friends can literally pull your money together and start a corporation while working a wage job. This is why socialists are the flat earthers of economics. They frequently use words that they don't even know the meaning of. You want to know why healthcare is so expensive? Look up the Certificate of Need law. And, by the way, explain to me why it's legal for a pharmaceutical company to patent and copyright a life-saving medication. Maybe they wouldn't hold a monopoly on the pharmaceutical industry if they couldn't do that. That is granted because of the state. And there are nations with universal health care, and there are people in those nations who complain about it just as much as we complain about our healthcare system in the U.S. You think I don't talk to people outside of this country? I mean, you think I've never been to a blue state, so it would make sense. Canada is literally starting to offer people who have treatable conditions assisted instead of actual treatment because it's cheaper. Universal healthcare, in my humble opinion, is completely overrated. And most of the problems we have in the U.S. with our healthcare system has more to do with government intervention in the market. Education, private education's been around longer than state education and has a much more successful track record. And giving the state control of education only gave them the authority to red zone certain minority groups into lower income schools. Happens all the time in the very blue city of Baton Rouge. But there's also a lot of private charter schools that are sponsored by local historically black universities that are doing wonders for marginalized communities. What do you know? The free market wins again! We can have gay marriage? Here's a question. Why is the government in charge of telling people who can and can't get married anyway? Why does the government help people extort their exes when they get bored and leave a relationship? Maybe the government shouldn't be involved with marriage to begin with. Seriously, talk about an all-consuming entity that owns everything. That's the government, not corporations.
Government, good government, which is something we don't have.
Yes, that's the entire point of libertarianism. You're getting there. The government will never be good, so it should be limited. Talk about having a balance, but what you're advocating for isn't a balance. Government already has the authority to do everything you're speaking of, but they choose not to do it to the best of their ability because who's going to stop paying them? In the free market, if somebody else is offering something better for less, you can take your business to them instead of their competitors. The government just takes what it wants. Especially under socialism because y'all don't respect private property rights. Y'all believe in collectivization for the betterment of the community. But who gets to decide what is and isn't good for the community? Oh right, the government that's sending millions of dollars to the Ukraine and Israel as we speak.
Meeting the basic needs of people. People need healthcare. People need education. People need to eat.
But this upsets you? You mad about that? You're mad because Javier Milei has allowed employers to pay their employees with milk and meat. At least he's feeding the people, unlike socialist policies that have historically led to mass starvation and man-made famine. Holodomor, Great Leap Forward, how's life in Venezuela right now? Yes, and I know that was a Babylon Bee meme. Actually, I made it. I just thought it was something the Babylon Bee would say, so I just put their logo on it. But that's literally what y'all are starting to sound like here. Y'all are mad because libertarianism is finally getting tested. And even though we don't know the results of these policies, we do know that they are being tried. And you are scared that they might actually work out. And if they work out, well, this uptick in popularity that socialism has been experiencing for the last decade and a half, it's going to come to a grinding halt. This is why y'all hate libertarians. We offer all the social progress, but we don't want to infringe on people's rights to exist peacefully so long as they don't infringe on anybody else's right to exist peacefully. The difference between libertarians and socialists is y'all look at all the bad stuff that the government has done and you think, I can fix him. We look at it and go, yeah, fuck that shit. Right, you don't know anything. You're clearly talking out your butt once again, proving you just making this up as you go along.
So a corporation is a legal body, right, that is there to make a profit.
No, that's businesses in general. All businesses exist to make a profit. You don't know what a corporation is. We went over this in the last video. A corporation is a business model that is supported by private investors who buy into the company in the form of stock. And as such, they assume all risk and liability for the company, whether it succeeds or fails. If it does well, they will make a profit. If it does poorly, they lose money on them. You also have a sole proprietorship in which a business is owned by a single individual. You have a partnership where it is owned by two individuals. And it doesn't matter if you're running a sole proprietorship, a partnership, or a corporation. If you are starting one, you have to register an LLC so the government can tax you. So contrary to where you went with this, businesses are taxed.
And capitalism. Have you seen the mines in Africa?
What about it? What aboutism? You think capitalist nations are the only ones who have created landmines? You think capitalist nations are the only ones who pollute the environment? China far outpaces the US and Europe in terms of pollution, completely dwarfing both. And it is run by the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. No matter what you want to believe, the facts are not on your side. Y'all are producing more pollutants and doing more harm to the ecosystem than capitalism. Whether you want to accept it or not is irrelevant.
Now you say that people complain in countries where there is universal health care. Of course there's going to be complaints.
Yeah, I have 30,000 followers on this app. And you think I don't know people in other countries who live under those systems and have complained about them to me? And all you can say, yeah, of course they're going to complain because it's not a perfect system. Nobody in this conversation has argued that poor people shouldn't have access to healthcare. What I did point out is that socialized healthcare isn't the fix-all people like you make it out to be. I also pointed out that the reason cost of healthcare is so high in the United States has everything to do with government intervening in the marketplace and not free market capitalism. And as such, you do not need socialism to fix the healthcare problems in the United States. There are free market alternatives. For Christ's sakes, I don't have access to healthcare. I'm not begging the government to be this divine savior and rescue me from a life of poverty. I don't trust them to do it. So stop with this guilt trip monologue. You're gonna go nowhere with me.
Because corporations manipulate the government.
Yes. So take away power from the government and the corporations will also be powerless. They don't do all this stuff on their own. They are using the government to prop themselves out. You have already admitted that the corporations do not rule on their own. They rule by coercing and bribing the government. If you get the government out of healthcare and return that power back to the people, who are the corporations going to bribe? Who's going to bail these corporations out when they go under? Nobody. They'll just go out of business.
Well, the streets and this and that, the city's blue, but the state is red, and it's the city's blah, 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 blah.
If you're gonna try to quote me, at least quote me accurately. The city blah, 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 just say you didn't pay attention and actually aren't listening to have a civil conversation. My point was that the federal, state, and local government are all responsible for completely different things. Each of these levels of government have completely different responsibility. The state is not responsible for running every city within the state's police department. So if you live in a blue city with a very corrupt police department, the blame for the corruption falls on the city, not the state. And you can talk about getting funding from the federal government. Where does the federal government get its fundings? Oh yeah, it steals it from the workers in the form of income tax. Sorry if I believe somebody like me who lives paycheck to paycheck shouldn't have to pay out the ass to start a business because the government wants its fair share. Let me ask you this, what is your fair share of somebody else's hard work? The free market gave me a payment plan on a food truck I couldn't afford out of pocket. The state is charging me an arm and a leg to tell me that my brand new food truck isn't clean enough or up to code. In a capitalist society, somebody who works for a living and lives paycheck to paycheck would be able to start a small business and run it however they see fit without the government intervening and charging them an arm and a leg just to operate.
Politicians that will do the bidding of the people. But no. In the case of red states like Louisiana,
once again, proving that socialists are just diet Democrats and don't actually understand politics whatsoever. They just hate the Republicans more. Republicans are red, Democrats are blue, neither major party gives a crap about me or you. Said it once, I'll say it again, I'll say it until it gets through your thick skull. Democrats do the exact same thing. They embezzle money all the time. They manipulate the stock market for profit all the time. That's how Nancy Pelosi, a representative from California, San Francisco nonetheless, became a millionaire. She didn't do it in politics alone. Then there's Kamala Harris, who was a prosecutor out of San Francisco, who withheld evidence that would have exonerated an inmate on death row. Yeah, that's a real good look for blue states, isn't it? Totally different from the red states. You're just as bad, if not worse in many situations. And like I told you in the last video, I'm not just repeating what I hear on Fox News, which is another assumption you probably have about me. Don't watch Fox News, don't watch cable news at all. But I have actually been to San Francisco, and Oakland, and Sacramento, and St. Louis Obispo, because I have family in California, you dense fuck. Cut the high and mighty crap about being from a red state, blue state. You're both equally worthless as far as I'm concerned. I swear, socialists are really just diet Democrats.
Show me a libertarian solution for education.
See, if you would pay attention instead of hearing blah, 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 you would have actually had your answer from the first video, so I'll just play it for you. The state control of education only gave them the authority to red zone certain minority groups into lower income schools. Happens all the time in the very blue city of Baton Rouge. But there's also a lot of private charter schools that are sponsored by local historically black universities that are doing wonders for marginalized communities. So call me when you learn the skill of paying attention to what your political opponents are actually saying and arguing for. You are seriously trying to debunk concrete evidence with hypothetical scenarios.
Born in a poor household would have to work since maybe 4, 5, 6 to help support the family instead of going to school.
You know, for somebody who hates corporations and monopoly, man, you sure do defend the education system that was designed by the biggest one of all. John Rockefeller said it himself. He wanted a nation of workers, not thinkers. Y'all complain that our education system is outdated and it was meant to create blind workers. But you don't want to fix the problem. Can't just throw money at the education system and think it's going to get better. It's not. They're just going to keep doing the same thing over and over again as long as you're giving them money to do it. More importantly, there are all kinds of online learning platforms like Wondrium, the Great Courses Plus, Skillshare, Brilliant, that have made higher learning accessible through a smartphone. Smartphones that exist because of capitalism and innovation. I might not be able to get a degree through any of this, but I can learn the material, and employers at this point don't really care if you're educated as long as you know what you're doing and can make them a buck. Once again, capitalism proving it does a better job of providing education to the needy than socialism.
What is your libertarian solution for healthcare?
I already told you. Abolish certificate of need laws that restrict the number of hospitals that can be built in a given area. Also, get rid of patent laws that allow pharmaceutical companies to gain a monopoly on any medication they invent. That way, other competitors can jump in and start selling it themselves at a discounted rate. That drives the price down. Pay attention. Keep up. Don't just care. Blah, 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 blah.
Company can create it, can manufacture it, even though they didn't invest any money in the development of that drug?
I thought socialists were in favor of collective ownership anyway. I thought you were against pharmaceutical companies making excessive profit. Which is it? Sorry for believing that the sale and distribution of life-saving medication should be public domain.
Explain. I would like you to give me in detail actual solution for actual problem.
I already did multiple times, and it's become obvious that you're not going to pay attention because all you hear is blah, 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 blah. You're not listening to educate yourself. You're just listening to tell the other guy they're wrong, but you cannot prove that we're wrong. All you're doing at this point is just giving a long list of whataboutisms, and it just proves that you're just going to keep moving the goalposts no matter what evidence is presented in front of you to debunk your position. Call me when you learn how to pay attention and use critical thinking instead of just repeating sketchy things you heard on the internet. Yeah, I have 30,000 followers on this app, and you think I don't know people?
Who gives a fuck how many followers you have?
Once again, proving that you can't actually argue with what I'm saying, so you have to misquote me on it. Play the rest of the clip. Don't just take it out of context to make me look childish.
Of course there's going to be complaints.
Yeah, I have 30,000 followers on this app. And you think I don't know people in other countries who live under those systems and have complained about them to me? Contrary to what you need to make me out to be, I'm not some child who's just flexing how many followers I have. I was making a point. I have followers all over the world, many in nations that do have universal health care, and they have multiple criticisms about it. Stop misquoting me just because you don't have a valid argument to anything I am saying.
Now you complain about the CCP and that communism is destroying the environment.
Yeah, because the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, is responsible for more pollution than any other country. And the only rebuttal you seem to have is this no true Scotsman fallacy. Well, they have free markets, so it's not really communism. Bull crap! In order to get involved in the Chinese economy, you have to be a member of the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. And if the party tells you to stop producing iPhones and start making bombs, you have to do it. Furthermore, this four-pest genocide that they did during the Great Leap Forward, yeah, the market wasn't free back then. Mao Zedong had a total iron grip on the Chinese government. So even before China opened up its markets to international trade, they were still doing detrimental things to their local ecosystems and environment. Then we have the Chernobyl meltdown in Ukraine that happened during the USSR's reign. Oh, and then there's the fact that the Aral Sea was pretty much completely drained by Joseph Stalin himself to irrigate farmland. Like it or not, these things happened under communism, not capitalism. Contrary to what you frame in your video, I never said that this stuff doesn't happen under capitalism. I never said that capitalism prevents the pollution of the environment. But I pointed out that communists have no room to talk because they do it exponentially more. Furthermore, China is not the big manufacturing hub you think it is. They have been overthrown for manufacturing by Mexico and India. It's been quite well known for the last couple of years that companies are leaving China for India and Mexico. Keep up!
Now, the other thing is, you're kind of admitting that you don't keep a tidy, clean place, and then you want to sell food?
No, I complained about the excessive regulations and licensing fees I have to pay while I'm living paycheck to paycheck trying to start a food truck. Hell, I can fucking show it to you. And this is why communists have absolutely no right lecturing libertarians about hating the poor. Y'all hate the rich so much that you would willingly hurt the poor if it hurt the rich too. Y'all are the ones defending tooth and nail the systems that keep poor people poor by making it harder for them to start a business and compete with major corporations. Oh, look how nasty and disgusting it is. Look at the size of this roach. Whoa! Totally unsanitary, bro. Not cool. So disgusting and nasty. That is a brand new truck and it has never been used. It is polished clean. I never said that I want to run an unsanitary food truck. I said I shouldn't have to pay thousands of dollars of licensing fees just to run a business. I live paycheck to paycheck right now. God forbid I strike out on my own and become an entrepreneur instead of a wage slave, as you communists like to say. Forbid I want somebody who works for wages to be able to afford to start their own business out of pocket.
I pay upwards of 25% of my tax.
Good for you. Explain to me why it's okay for the government to forcibly take a quarter of everybody's income, even if they need that money to live off of. And it's not like your tax dollars are going to anything useful. They're going to bomb kids in Palestine.
And this is the Ohio River back in the 70s.
Right. And you think the government is needed to keep people from polluting the environment like they did back then? Tell me, what did the government do in response to the train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio? Oh, right. They tried to cover it up. With or without government regulations, this stuff happens. If East Palestine taught us anything, is that the government will pollute your environment and then act like that didn't happen.
Okay. So you would make a whole town sick of diphtheria or the plague because you want to cut corners.
There have literally been multiple restaurants who passed their health inspection and have done that. You know what shut those restaurants down? The fact that their customers kept getting sick and kept complaining about it. And as such, those restaurants went out of business. The health inspector didn't shut those disgusting places down. The free market did. And the irony is, you already know this happens. You explained it in your own video.
And if they get sick at my place and they decide not to come back, that's the free market. Now, you've also mentioned that you visited San Francisco, that you visited San Luis Obispo, and da-da-da-da.
Once again, proving you actually have no intention of listening to understand libertarianism, but rather just to argue and tell them they're wrong by basing everything you understand off stereotypes you got from memes and Reddit. It doesn't matter if I've never lived in these places. I have friends who live there, I have family who live there, and I visit quite often. You're just moving the goalposts and saying, but, it doesn't matter. I've been to these places, I visit them often, I talk to my friends and family who live there frequently, and they have just as many complaints about living there as I have about Louisiana. And in both cases, we're complaining about the government and the way the states are being run. And the reality is, we could say the same thing about everywhere on the planet. I like the Iranian people. I like Iranian culture. You couldn't pay me to visit Iran. It doesn't matter if I've never lived there. I've been there. I have friends and family who live there, and I visit quite often. I know what life is like outside of Louisiana. I'm not some dumb hillbilly that you seem to be making me out to be. All you're doing is engaging in special pleading and nothing more.
Now, I forgot to mention that on the other video, where you were ranting about the trash on the street, that's actually the people, not the government.
That's irrelevant, because the only reason I brought it up is because you tried to use the Free State Project as a gotcha moment because they had trash and lit. I pointed out that that shit exists everywhere. Whether or not you pay the government to do anything about it is irrelevant, because the government is already paid to do something about it, and they don't. But now that you mention it, let's take another one, because I can show you the guy who actually does clean up around here. At least I can show you his food truck. He's actually been helping me start mine. This is the Big Cheesy of Tigerland. We also have Taco Truck and Hungry Howie's Pizza. But my friend started the Big Cheesy a couple years ago. This man and his employees do more to clean up this neighborhood than the government. What do you know? The free market wins again. See, if you're going to bring up the litter that happened in New Hampshire, don't get mad when I point out that stuff happens everywhere. Oh, and just because I know it's going to get under your skin, California actually litters and pollutes more than any other state in the U.S. Once again, blue state's taking the big L.
Give me an example of a problem and then a libertarian solution.
I already have, multiple times. You just don't listen. Multiple times I have explained solutions to every problem you have discussed, and you have selected to ignore it. Instead, you rely on these straw man caricatures of what you perceive libertarians to be, instead of actually listening to libertarian policies. That's why in every rebuttal you're doing, at one point or another, you just do this.
And da-da-da-da. It's the city's blah, 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 blah.
For the record, you don't get to call anybody childish if this is how you quote people. Blah, 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 blah. You're not listening to a word I am saying. You're taking a lot of stuff I have said out of context. You're completely lying on me. And the only time you argue against libertarian positions, it's a straw man caricature of how you perceive libertarians to be. You have yet to argue against a single statement I have made, and you have literally made stuff up as you have gone along. But please, keep talking. I'm happy to keep posting more videos debunking everything you have to say, and I will also be uploading it to my YouTube, and I need longer content for that. So go ahead and keep running your mouth, though I'm not sure if you can call it running considering how slow you talk. You don't even understand how to debate. You're supposed to talk fast, high energy, fast pace, squeeze the maximum amount of information, shortest amount of time. And you socialists think I'm just angry and belligerent. No, I know what I'm doing. You don't. Communism has failed. Socialism sucks. The real reason y'all hate libertarians is because we offer all the social progress and we want to get rid of income tax, which is something just about every worker wants. Not every worker wants to collectively own the means of production. Some of them just want to make a paycheck and keep what they earned. And now that Javier Milei has been elected president of Argentina, libertarianism is facing the ultimate test that communists have failed the world over in just about every civilization that has attempted it. You're scared that if Javier Milei succeeds, that's going to create a whole new libertarian revolution to counter the resurgence of communist and Marxist ideologies in the last couple of decades. Libertarianism is the way to progress. Get on board or get run over.
Oh, you didn't say, I want to run a dirty business. You're implying it.
No, I don't. Advocating that the government shouldn't have the authority to make people pay excessive regulation does not mean I want to run a dirty food truck. In your own video, you even go on to tell me that I should just do it and ignore the government. The tamale lady does it. I mean, you talk about I'm not the one calling the cops on the tamale lady or selling fruit on the sidewalk. Neither am I, Kuya. I don't think the police should have the authority to intervene in this. Like, the shining stupidity is you actually believe in free market principles. You actually believe that people should have the right to work for profit. You tell me that I should just go ahead and start the food truck. What's gonna happen? What am I afraid of? And then you mock me for not wanting to be fined by the state because I didn't get the inspection done the first time? Yes, that's the exact same thing I am trying to tell you. You are making my point for me. Why should the government be able to shut down an old lady's tamale truck? Let her do her business.
Right? Because you want to take away regulations, you want to take away inspections because they are very expensive.
Did I say take them away? No, I criticize them for being expensive to the point that working class individuals can't afford them. Not once in your entire video series did you say anything about reducing the cost of living for working class people. I don't know where Marxists get this idea that they are the champions of the working class when they can't even agree with libertarians on cutting taxes for the working class. Maybe we should cut the cost and the fees of starting a business so that people living paycheck to paycheck can afford to do it. I said this in the very video you are responding to, but like always, you do not pay attention.
How you're complaining about all of this so-called regulations, that yes, they are set up by
Meaning that these companies do not rule by themselves. They use the government to do their dirty work. They bribe the government to do their dirty work. And your solution is to give the government more power so that they can regulate the companies that are designing the regulations to stifle competition. Now, on the surface, this seems like a classic case of communists and libertarians going back and forth arguing what came first, the chicken or the egg. But here's the thing, eggs existed before chickens. That's scientifically proven. And just like hard data shows that one came before the other, the government existed before there was the business class that you speak of. In the ancient times, the ruling class were the business class. The difference is these corporations don't have the authority to make me buy their crap. The government takes my money whether I like it or not. And even if I disapprove with what they're doing with it, I still have to pay. I don't get a choice.
Certain degree of regulation, if we let every business do whatever they want, again, what we end up with? Pollution.
Again, pollution is not unique to capitalism. And in fact, Marxism has a much worse track record when it comes to pollution. I know you're still playing this no true Scotsman fallacy with the CCP. Sorry, they are the Chinese Communist Party. They are representing communism. The foundation of their beliefs is communism. The only evidence you have to say that it is capitalism is that they have manufacturing and that they have markets, that they are selling for profit. The government is making the majority of the profit off of those sales. Manufacturing has absolutely nothing to do with capitalism. The purpose of communism is to make a society in which workers own the means of production, manufacturing. The manufacturing, the profits, are all collectively owned by the state. Whether you want to acknowledge it or not, the CCP are communists in name and in practice. And that still hasn't even touched on the USSR's track record of pollution. The Chernobyl meltdown, one of the worst nuclear power plant disasters in human history, happened on the USSR's watch. The USSR, by direct order of Joseph Stalin, completely drained the Aral Sea in an attempt to create farmland to grow cotton, which didn't work. All of these things were the result of collectivization under a communist state. I know communism in theory is supposed to be stateless, but reality check, communism doesn't work.
I think you are not really a student of history. If you were, you would understand why the EPA was created.
I know the EPA is completely useless and didn't prevent anything from happening in East Palestine, Ohio. It didn't prevent the BP oil spill either. It's a useless organization that does little more than generate revenue for the state. And I noticed that people in your comments actually think defending the FDA is a flex. You mean the backbone of systemic racism? The same FDA that still classifies marijuana as a Schedule I narcotic? The same FDA that's disproportionately been used to target Black and Latino communities for victimless crimes? Good job. Keep defending the FDA. You can keep it. I don't want it.
You should look into life in the United States and how food was manufactured prior to 1911, 1910.
Most people grew their own food. Most people lived in small farming communities. And if you were actually the student of history you think you are, you would have known that industrial farming wasn't even made possible until around the 1910s, 1920s. This is Fritz Harper. He is the very reason industrial farming is possible. He discovered how to synthesize nitrogen out of the atmosphere and turn it into liquid ammonia, thus revolutionizing mainstream farming that we know today. Clearly, the only person who is not a student of history in this conversation is you, my good sir. And if all these regulations were doing such a good job in keeping people healthy, how come obesity rates are through the roof? Even people who live paycheck to paycheck are obese right now. The quality of food has gotten significantly worse since the 1900s. People's access to healthy, whole foods has become more and more expensive and more restricted. Eating healthy has become a luxury. So not only do you not understand history, you also don't seem to understand biology either.
I hope you're right, and Milei takes Argentina out of misery, but I doubt it. Why? He just devalued the Argentinian peso.
The Argentinian peso was already declining for years. You're complaining about being paid in eggs and bread and milk. That's worth more than the pesos! You need a truckload of Argentinian pesos to get a loaf of bread at this point. In that situation, I think getting paid in food is much more preferable. Everybody needs to eat, and what I don't eat, I can sell to my neighbors for a profit. Welcome to capitalism, Kuyan! If food is more valuable than actual currency, I'd rather have the food, and I can sell what I don't eat for profit and use that to pay my bills. More importantly, you're glossing over the fact that Javier Milei did something else. He allowed US dollars to be exchanged on the open market in Argentina. And US dollars are a lot more valuable than the Argentinian peso. So yeah, please keep leaving out key details to make your opponents look bad. After 5 videos, you have made it very clear that is the only tactic you have in your arsenal.
We don't believe that giving more power to the powerful is going to be the answer.
You 100% do believe that. Throughout this entire video, you have defended excessive taxation, excessive regulations, and excessive intervention into the individual's right to govern themselves. You have even taunted me because I don't want to be fined for running an unlicensed food truck. In your own words, you have acknowledged that corporations do not rule directly, but they rule through coercing the government to do things that they wouldn't do themselves or can't do themselves. And your solution to this is to give the government more power. You absolutely believe in giving more power to the already powerful.
You will become the next McDonald's.
Where did I say anything of the sort? McDonald's sucks. I'm not trying to get rich. I'm just trying to earn a living and work for myself.
So instead of voting for a candidate in your city that may change things, you just bitch and complain.
This is probably the stupidest assumption you made about me thus far, and you've made a lot of dumb ones at that. I am the chair of the social media committee for the East Baton Rouge Parish Libertarian Party, and I will be running for Metro Council in 2024 for Metro District 12. I am involved in actively trying to change the system, campaigning for libertarian candidates in my own backyard. I will be running as a libertarian to represent the district I live in. So remember, boys and girls, when you assume things, you just make an ass out of you, not me. Are you gonna actually engage with what I say this time?